Hello, Intermediate Comp students. Mr. Hom here. We're going to talk about taking notes. Try not to bore you to death. Anyway, hopefully you can get a good understanding of it and be able to take your sources, get some information down, and then later you'll organize it and then draft. But first of all, we need to work on taking notes. So let's just go to our Google site, and on our Google site, you should be able to look at lesson 3, note taking. We're going to talk about the note card system in this video, addressing bibliography cards, guide question cards, and then note cards. We'll spend most of our time here just to make sure that we have information. If we have time in this video and it's not too long, I may attempt to talk a little bit about electronic notes, or I'll do it on a separate video. So with that being said, I'm going to jump over to here and talk about taking notes. As we look at these notes, you have an option for taking notes. Option 1 would be using the note card system. If you decide not to do that, I'm still introducing it to you because in college you may have a professor that asks you to do this. Typically in most research papers they may ask you to hand in your notes. I will ask you to hand in your notes. So whether it's note cards that are electronic copy or whether they're actual physical note cards, you will hand them in. So let's talk about the note card system. I'm going to just go back to some primary question, guide questions, and so on. So what I want to cover here before I move into the note card system is reviewing your guide questions. Some of you failed to have a primary research question. This is your ultimate question. This is the one that you're trying to answer for your research paper. The rest of them, these guide questions, are going to help you find information that will allow you to evaluate, to analyze, and look at the evidence that you get from these questions that will help you answer it. For example, what costs are associated with wind energy? Well, if I'm trying to answer whether it's a practical solution for our energy in America, I need to know how much things cost. So I will get things like how much the land will cost, how much the materials of a windmill will cost, maintenance cost, replacement costs, things like that. All that evidence is in there, and I, as the researcher, will formulate my own opinion in the conversation to say that's too much, or oh, that's an okay price for helping the environment, if you look at later some of the other questions, or anything else. But I need to know this reporting facts to then evaluate that. And so within my paper, that's what I'm trying to do, is answer an idea, an opinion that I'm going to create. So this then stresses to you that you are writing an essay and not a report. I don't want the facts, just the facts. I don't care what they cost. I want to know what it costs and why you think then it's practical or not practical. So taking any of your topics, that's what you're looking to do. So if you need help with that still within your questions, and some of you are still late with your proposals, I would get those in ASAP. But if you need help, please come and ask. All right, I'm going to skip over this next page, and if we have time, we'll come back to it. Let's start with over on the far right. Here you'll take a look at bibliography cards. So within the bibliography cards, this is just taking your bibliographical information and putting in one source on each cards. So you are supposed to have a 12 source bibliography, a working bibliography. So if you were doing cards, you would make 12 cards. 1 through 12, and then again, if you add some, subtract some, you're always going to add the number to it. You're not going to say, hey, number 2 I'm not using, and then bring in a new number 2. You would just hold on to number 2, maybe put an X in it that you're not going to use it necessarily, but just hold on to it for the time being, and then add a 13 if you add another source. In your note card system, you don't necessarily have to have them in alphabetical order. At the end of the process, you could write out your bibliography and then take your cards and say, okay, what is the first one that should be on my list in alphabetical order, and so on. If you are going to do the note card system, you don't have to do the source cards since you've already done the bibliography cards. But the numbering will come in handy whether you do it or not. Those are things that we will look at. So that's the bibliography cards. Going to your research question cards or guide question cards. So if you go back to these four, you'll note that I lettered them A, B, C, and D. Going back to your cards, you would do the same thing. Guide question A, and then you should write out the question. What is guide question A? And then B, and then C, and then D. So that's where your guide questions are. So as we go to the next slide, each of these guide questions will be written out. And how I want you to look at them is first see them as like a deck of playing cards. That each guide question is a suit. So this could be hearts, this could be diamonds, this can be spades, this can be clubs. And the reason that you organize it is just like with the cards. You can, if someone told you to organize a deck of cards, you could organize them according to suit. And then later on, you could organize them according to numerical order. So this is all about organizing your notes and how you can move these things around. So first of all, your guide question A, when you take an actual note card, and let me just jump back here, you always need a source number of where you get the information. You need to get the page number that you found it on, and then you need your guide question letter that it's answering. And here again, guide question, source number, page number, and then the actual information. So going back to our slide here, you'll note the guide question, source number, page number. And then in this case, it just says direct quote should be identified by using quotes to help you recall that information is word for word, that you are quoting it word for word, and it should show up that way in your paper. If you don't have quotes, no quotes should be used, but you may wish to identify whether it is a paraphrase with a P, a summary with a SUM or an S, or just common knowledge. Knowledge that is common because you found it in, typically the rule is if you find it in two or more sources, it's common knowledge and you don't need to cite it. But if it's a study or statistic, it's something that you'll want to cite. But if it's something that you don't know and you want to write it down in a note to make sure that you incorporate that into your paper, that's what you could write down as CK, is common knowledge. And then the one last point is one idea should be placed on each note card. Whether you're doing electronic notes or the note card system, every section every note that you take should focus on one idea. Even if it's a related idea, again, for example, the wind energy, and I'm dealing with cost. If one deals with startup costs and then it keeps going on that same source about maintenance cost, I would start a new note card. I'm going to use this later to divvy it up and organize this information. So you need to just focus in on only putting one idea per card. Okay? Don't go beyond that. Again, even if the idea is related. So now you'll take a look at the guide question A. Underneath here, and just as a reference, how many cards should you have? How many note cards should you have? It really depends on your topic, and it really depends on how much you plan on analyzing the information and how much you need to write down to remember. So it could go from 10 to 25. Sometimes you'll have teachers and professors who will ask for a certain number of note cards. I will not, but when you hand it in and your note cards do not reflect, or maybe they do reflect, the content of your paper, it'll be evident that you maybe did not take enough notes. So within that, again, I would say a good rule of thumb is to be in the double digits. I would say anywhere between 12 to 25, again, depending on the topic. But each one, what we're indicating here is with where these are at. You organize according to the guide question. Every one of these will have an A up in the upper left-hand corner. But this one comes from source 1, the second one comes from source 3, and the next two come from source 5. And this one comes from source 12. This comes from in source number 1. It has page 78 from page 321 and no page. So this maybe is an online source. So that's what you're looking at and making sure that you do for the note card system. All right, I'm going to stop here and I'll create a new one for online note taking next. All right, if you have questions, please ask. Good luck.